Imagine you have been married for 5 years to the person you consider the love of your life. Everything's perfect until, during a surprise visit to your brother, you come across a scene you would never expect. Your own wife in his arms. What would you do upon witnessing the person you love most and your brother, one of the people you trust most, in such an intimate and treacherous moment? Walter had always believed he had a perfect marriage with Chloe. Together for 5 years, they shared a life full of love and plans for the future. Everything in their relationship seemed harmonious, and they rarely argued, always maintaining open and honest communication. The house they lived in reflected this harmony, with every corner carefully decorated with souvenirs from trips and happy moments they had spent together. One Thursday afternoon, driven by an impulse of affection and longing, Walter decided to pay a surprise visit to his brother Mark, with whom he had a very close relationship. He expected a pleasant afternoon, full of conversations about life and future plans, perhaps even planning a trip together. Upon arriving at Mark's house, he carried with him a bottle of their favorite wine, anticipating a toast between brothers that would further strengthen their bond. Upon entering the house, Walter called out for Mark, but received no answer. He was not initially concerned, assuming Mark might be in the garden or occupied somewhere in the house. Moved by curiosity and the desire to surprise his brother, Walter walked towards the sound of muffled voices coming from the backyard. As he approached, he imagined Mark might be tending to his plants or preparing something special on the grill, something they always enjoyed doing together. With each step, the sound of voices became clearer, and Walter's heart raced, excited by the surprise he thought he was about to give. However, upon turning the corner leading to the garden, his expectation of a joyful afternoon crumbled instantly. There was Chloe, his own wife, in Mark's arms, sharing a passionate kiss. The scene before his eyes was completely unexpected and seemed to cut deeper with every second he watched, motionless. The scene before his eyes seemed surreal. Walter felt as if the ground opened up beneath his feet. He couldn't move for a few seconds, only watching in disbelief as the betrayal unfolded before him. The garden, which had once seemed a place of joy and family gatherings, now became a stage of disillusionment. The sound of birds and the glow of the late afternoon sun contrasted painfully with the darkness that settled in his heart. The laughter and conversations he had imagined sharing were now replaced by a deafening silence, only interrupted by his own heart pounding loudly in his chest. When he finally regained his breath, his voice, though trembling with emotion, broke the silence as he called out Chloe and Mark's name. Their reaction was immediate, a mixture of surprise and terror, as if only at that moment they had become aware of the reality of their actions. Mark was the first to speak, stumbling over his words, trying to explain that it meant nothing, that it had been a momentary impulse. His voice was filled with desperation, and he gestured frantically, as if trying to erase the scene Walter had just witnessed with his justifications. Chloe, on the other hand, was pale, with tears in her eyes that began to flow freely down her face. She begged for forgiveness, saying it had been a terrible mistake, that she had never meant to hurt Walter. Her words seemed to echo in an empty chamber, unable to reach Walter's wounded heart. He, immersed in a whirlwind of emotions, found himself paralyzed between shock and disbelief, unable to process the tattered excuses offered to him. With every word he heard, the reality of the betrayal became more palpable, and the pain sharper, as if each excuse was, in fact, a confirmation of the unimaginable. Without saying a word, Walter turned and left Mark's house. He walked aimlessly through the streets, trying to come to terms with the blow he had just received. His steps were automatic, guided more by the need to get away from the scene of betrayal than by any specific destination. The fresh afternoon air contrasted with the heat of the occasional tears that rolled down his face. The man he considered his best friend and brother had betrayed his trust in the most painful way possible. And Chloe, the woman he loved and trusted unconditionally, had broken his heart without hesitation. Each step seemed to carry the weight of every happy memory that now turned to ashes. As he walked, Walter wondered how he could ever regain trust in love and loyalty when those closest to him had demonstrated such betrayal. As he walked, Walter tried to organize his thoughts and emotions. The initial anger and shock gave way to a deep sadness that consumed him. In his mind, he replayed every moment he had spent with Chloe, trying to find signs he had ignored or moments when the truth might have revealed itself. The memories of their marriage, the anniversaries celebrated, the small daily achievements they had shared, all of this was now tinged with the color of doubt. He thought of all the moments he had shared with Mark, all the times his brother had been his confidant and support. Now that relationship was stained by betrayal, leaving a void where there had once been trust and admiration. With each step, Walter felt more isolated, as if a chasm opened between him and the people he loved most. The city around him seemed indifferent to his pain, and this indifference only heightened his feeling of loneliness and betrayal. After hours of wandering, Walter decided he needed to confront the situation head-on. He returned home, finding Chloe sitting in the living room, an expression of anxiety etched on her face. She tried to approach him, but Walter kept his distance, needing space to breathe and organize his thoughts. The room, which had once been a refuge of comfort and joy, now seemed an emotional battlefield. Chloe began to speak, her trembling voice revealing the fear and remorse she felt. She explained that the attraction between her and Mark had started a few months ago, something they initially tried to ignore, but eventually became stronger than they could control. She admitted they should have been honest with Walter from the beginning, but the fear of hurting him led them to make wrong decisions. As he listened, Walter felt torn between the desire to understand and the difficulty of forgiving. Listening to Chloe's confession, Walter felt each word like a stab. He wondered how he had not noticed the signs, how he had been so blind. The pain was immense, but Walter knew he needed to make decisions about the future. He listened carefully as Chloe detailed the moments of weakness and the justifications she and Mark had created for themselves. With each detail, Walter's heart grew heavier, blending feelings of betrayal and disillusionment. Despite the anger, he remained calm, a part of him still seeking to understand the depth of their mistake. He asked Chloe to leave for a few days so that he could think clearly, ponder his own feelings, and decide the best path forward without the constant pressure of her presence reminding him of the betrayal. In the following days, Walter struggled to understand how to move forward. He spoke with close friends, seeking advice and a friendly shoulder to unburden his sorrows. Each conversation opened his heart a little more to the possibility of healing, despite the pain he still felt. Seeking a therapist was a crucial step in helping him process his feelings in a more structured way. With each therapy session, he allowed himself to explore his emotions, understanding that the betrayal had shaken his trust, but did not need to define his future. With professional help, Walter began to outline a plan to rebuild himself, learning to separate his feelings of anger and betrayal from the practical decisions about his relationship and personal life. This inner journey was painful, but each small step brought a breath of hope to his wounded heart. Walter also had a difficult conversation with Mark. He needed to hear his brother admit his mistakes and apologize. When they met, the tension was palpable, but necessary for them to try to understand and perhaps overcome what had happened. Mark was visibly remorseful and expressed deep regret for what he had done. He explained how he had allowed himself to be carried away by feelings he knew were wrong and how he had struggled with guilt over the months. Walter listened, trying to separate his anger from the need to understand the reasons behind his brother's actions. The conversation was charged with emotion, with moments of heavy silence as each digested the other's words. Though difficult, Walter knew that forgiving Mark would be important for his own inner peace. They decided to give it time to see if the brotherly relationship could be rebuilt in some way, though both knew nothing would be as before. One afternoon, Chloe asked to meet with him in person. They met in a public park, a neutral place, surrounded by the tranquility of nature. The serene environment of the park contrasted with the emotional turmoil they both felt. Chloe seemed different, more reflective and mature after weeks of therapy and self-evaluation. She shared her personal discoveries, explaining how she was beginning to understand the profound consequences of her actions and how those actions had affected not only Walter, but herself and everyone around them. She did not ask to get back together, but wanted Walter to know that she truly regretted the suffering she had caused. The meeting was marked by raw honesty and moments of contemplative silence as they both reflected on the shared words. Walter, listening intently, felt a mixture of relief and pain, knowing that this dialogue was crucial for both of them, regardless of the future of their relationship. During the meeting, Walter realized that he still felt affection for Chloe, despite everything. However, he knew the path back would be complicated and uncertain. He expressed his gratitude that she had been honest and that they were having this conversation. It was a moment of catharsis for both of them, sharing their pain and learnings. Still, Walter made it clear that he needed more time to consider any possibility of reconciliation. The park, with its calm setting and gentle breeze, provided a backdrop for reflection and the possibility of closure, even though their future as a couple remained uncertain. They parted with an embrace, a gesture that symbolized the respect and affection that still existed, despite the open wounds. Walter felt that, although forgiveness was not simple or immediate, he was on the path to understanding and accepting what had happened, opening space in his heart to heal completely. As Walter continued his journey of healing, he discovered new passions and strengthened old friendships. He began to travel more, something he had always wanted to do, but had never prioritized. Each trip brought new perspectives and strengthened his resilience. Walter realized that, although he could not control the actions of others, he had full control over how he responded and rebuilt himself. His travels took him to places he had never imagined, each with its own stories and life lessons. These experiences helped Walter rediscover himself, find joy in new cultures, new hobbies like photography and cooking, and new friendships he formed along the way. With each destination, he felt he was leaving a bit of the pain behind, replacing it with fresh, enriching memories. The relationship between Walter and Mark also began to show signs of improvement. They did not return to what they were before, but there was a new understanding and mutual respect. Walter learned that forgiveness was not only a gift for the one who received it, but also a liberation for the one who forgave. Slowly, they built a new normalcy, one that was rooted in acceptance and personal growth. The conversations between them were more reserved and meditative, focused on rebuilding a foundation of trust and understanding the emotions and mistakes that had led them to that point. Each encounter was an opportunity to show that, despite the wounds of the past, both were committed to maintaining a fraternal relationship, even if it required time and patience from both sides. Reflecting on everything that had happened, Walter felt a mixture of sadness and gratitude. Sadness for the lost love and trust, gratitude for the lessons learned, and the strength he discovered within himself. He knew that the journey to complete healing was still ongoing, but now he had the tools and support to face whatever lay ahead. With one last look at his former life, Walter closed that chapter, ready for the new stories that were yet to be written. He realized that every experience, no matter how painful, had contributed to his personal growth and prepared him for a better, more mindful, and resilient future. Thus, with renewed hope and a clear vision of what he wanted for his life, he moved forward, open to the infinite possibilities the future still had to offer. And you? What would you do in Walter's place? Comment on what you would do, and don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel to continue following more stories like this. I'll see you in a new story.